friends, you think I could eat this potato without a bad blood sugar spike? I'm sure you've been told that it's impossible. Well, today we're going to talk about how you can eat white potatoes, white bread, white rice, and have better blood sugar levels, better blood insulin levels, and lose weight. In fact, we're going to take a look at history to understand the connection between eating more carbs with better blood sugars and improved health. Now, even though it is absolutely possible to eat white potatoes, white rice, and white bread and have lower blood sugars than you do now and lose weight, you gotta admit, these foods aren't exactly that nutritious unless you have no other options to eat. But this white potato or a piece of white bread, or even white rice, they aren't the reason why you have persistent high blood sugars, which is very different than getting a blood sugar spike by eating one of these items. And in case nobody's told you before today, blood sugar spikes, they don't really mean anything. That's very normal. Everybody has blood sugar spikes when they eat carbohydrates, even I. But the problem is when you have persistent high blood sugars. That's actually what's dangerous. And the type of carbohydrates and what else you eat with those carbohydrates is what determines how high and how long your blood sugars will stay elevated. So if you don't want bad blood sugars, then watch this video towards the end, because we're going to talk about 10 different ways in which you can have better blood sugars and lower insulin levels and lose weight. It's super important because persistent high blood sugars are very dangerous, and in fact is the #1 cause of obesity and diabetes and all the complications that come with diabetes. So let's go over 10 common strategies people actually do to reduce their blood sugars. Some of these strategies are just a setup to fail. But their end goal is to lose weight. And honestly, any of these strategies will help you lose weight, but only one of these strategies will help you keep it off. And we'll talk about whether it makes sense or not for you to try it, because it's not just having low blood sugars, it's getting healthy and it's hitting longevity. So the #1 strategy is just to stop eating all carbohydrates. Basically, no more carbs, then you will never see a blood sugar spike. Now, that doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. And I understand that sometimes that's the easiest thing to do, is to give up on all carbohydrates, out of sight, out of mind. You reset your taste palette so that you don't choose those kind of foods anymore. But unfortunately, if you give up all carbs, even good carbs, it's not a very tasty diet. And most people will fall off the wagon very quickly. And even though they've lost weight, which is mostly water weight, they gained that weight right back because they went back to eating the food that made them gain weight in the first place. And then they actually got more insulin resistant because of their diet. So that's why they gain weight even faster. So if you want to be successful at keeping your weight off, lowering your blood sugars, then you really have to think about what you're going to eat to replace carbohydrates if you're not going to eat carbohydrates. And some people, they replace it with fat, like the ketogenic diet. And it is true that fat won't spike your blood sugars because there's no carbohydrates in fat, but it is also the reason why you can't eat carbohydrates after you eat a bunch of fat. You won't be able to eat white food anymore, white potatoes, white rice, white bread, and have good blood sugars if you tank up on the fat. And unfortunately, you are just going to crave this starchy texture, just like most people. And hence, they make chemicalized food like keto breads, keto bars, but they never quite taste like a piece of bread or a granola bar. And you know it. They're also much more expensive. And they have this chemicalized taste because they have chemicals that they use to put together to mimic the texture of carbohydrates. But we all know it's not a carbohydrate. And the real problem is that it's still super ultra processed food that ends up taxing your health with emulsifiers that change your gut microbiome. And they use fats that make you persistently insulin resistant. And then they use chemicalized amino acids. That also changes your metabolism. So these modern scientific inventions, they're chemicals. They have been invented in response to diseases related to the overconsumption of white refined products, white bread, white rice, that has been causing high blood sugars and high insulin because it's paired with fat. And unfortunately, it's been a failed experiment because most people will quit their ketogenic diet and they end up eating a high fat, high carbohydrate diet, even worse than their diet before they started the keto diet. However, for those that stick to the ketogenic diet, will that actually give you health and longevity? Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. It seems like the keto diet won't allow you to stick around very long because it doesn't reach longevity. And longevity isn't just like making stuff up. When you don't do it right, you're just not going to get that reward. Save your money and buy some real food. So that brings us to option number 2. What would you replace carbs with? Maybe protein. Usually that means lots of animal protein. But that also means that you still can't eat the white rice, white bread, and white potatoes, right? Or are you still eating them with your high protein? And what do people tell you to do? Is eat carbohydrates with protein to prevent blood sugar spikes. And yes, that's true. In the short term, it does. I've heard that. People have told me that. When I had gestational diabetes over 20 years ago, they made me talk to quote unquote a professional who told me to pair all my carbohydrates with a fat or with a protein. Now, do you think I actually listened to them? Did you know that protein actually will spike your insulin too? That's right. So when you have high insulin levels already, and then you add more protein, you're just going to drive higher insulin levels. And that's what drives obesity. Protein is a signaling molecule for your entire body. There are many different molecules. It regulates your metabolism, your cell repair, your immunity, and amino acids, which are the building block of proteins. It changes your blood pH. At least it tries to, and it will make it more acidic. But your body won't allow it to. So it tells your kidney to step it up and make sure that your pH in your blood stays pretty constant. That means high protein burns your kidneys. Protein stimulates growth and repair. So yes, it is important to eat protein, but the different kinds of protein has a different metabolic and immune effect in your body. So for example, if you eat food with insulin-like growth factor 1, that's a protein that promotes growth, that activates pathways to make your cells divide, synthesize more protein, or it inhibits apoptosis. IGF-1 is essential for normal growth and tissue repair. But if you have too much chronically high IGF-1 signaling, that's actually associated with cancer and accelerated aging in many models. So this is one reason why animal products are high in IGF-1 increases your risk of several cancers. So does that make sense to increase animal products in exchange to white starch? So I absolutely agree that we have to eat enough protein, but I also recognize that the wrong protein can get you in a lot of trouble. So that brings us to the third common dietary recommendation: eat your carbohydrates with fat. So this isn't just replacing carbs. This is actually eating carbs with fat. So why would you do that? To delay your absorption of glucose, just like the protein theory. So that means it's okay to eat cheese and pizza, starch and fat, donut, starch and fat, French fries, starch and fat. Does that make any sense to you? Does that kind of diet get you less fat and lower blood sugars? We all know eating those foods contributes to obesity and high blood sugars and keeps you diabetic. Yet influencers, they tell you that. Eat some fat with your carbohydrates. How does that even make any sense? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that those are not healthy foods. And in fact, if you eat fat with carbohydrates, your blood sugars stay persistently long higher, even though it doesn't spike as high. And if you want to live long enough to see a rocket scientist get the first human to Mars, then it is absolutely important to avoid eating fat with carbohydrates. So if you think about it, for decades, we've been told to eat grains. Remember the food pyramid with the bottom full of grains? And on the very top, we're supposed to eat oils and fats sparingly. So now in 2025, we're told to be liberal with the oils and fats and eat grains sparingly. So who's right? Well, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to lose weight and have better blood sugars, they're kind of both right. Because if you want to eat carbohydrates like this potato, you have to keep the fats and oils low. And if you want to eat fats and oils, then you have to get rid of the carbohydrates, keep them low. And why is that? Well, saturated fat, which is in all types of refined fruit and vegetable oils, including olive oil and avocado oil, and it's definitely in animal oils, including lard and butter. That is the reason why you can't combine butter and potatoes, because that saturated fat inhibits your mitochondria from taking the glucose in after you digest the starch. It basically makes your muscles insulin resistant. In essence, will increase the amount of insulin that you need to take care of these starches and sugars. And the more insulin you have, the more fat you get. But as soon as you reduce the fat, so if you take away that butter with the potato and you just eat the potato, within literally a couple of days, you become more insulin sensitive. And that means you can eat more carbohydrates and require less insulin to metabolize the carbohydrates that you're eating. In other words, eating starches and sugar and keeping your fats low allows your body to eat this starches and sugar better, which makes a ton of sense to me. This is because God designed us to be able to metabolize our food. And if only sugar and starches were available, then you metabolize that more effectively. But once you have fat in your diet, that actually tells your body you have a surplus of energy. So let's store some of it away. And that is the problem. We have such a huge surplus of energy. We eat so much food these days that your body just wants to save it up, store it away for a rainy day. Kind of like a savings account. If you're earning a lot of money, you're just going to put it in the savings, right? So that you can maybe earn some interest, and your own fat cells, that's what they're built out of, saturated fat. So if you eat more fat, your body, it's not going to convert it into just anything, right? It gets converted to only fat. You can't take fat and convert that to protein. And so then your fat cells get extra calories. And the ones that get filled up first are your visceral fat, the fat that cakes around your organs in your abdomen. And guess what? When you eat an excess amount of protein, your body can't store protein. It can only use up what it needs, and then the rest of it, it gets converted to fat. So that also makes you extra fat if you overeat protein. And then, of course, if you overeat starches and sugars, the body can't store it as starch and sugar. We only have a little bit of storage fuel. That's called glycogen. And when that's max saturated, the muscles won't accept any more starch or sugar. And starch and sugar, it's used as fuel, right, to help you run. But it's also used as structure, and it gets converted to fat. Have you noticed a theme? Any extra calories you eat, whether it's protein, carbs, or fats, what is it happens to them? It ends up all as fat. That is the quickest way to get obese, eat a lot of everything. So if you're gaining weight, you're simply eating too many calories. And that brings us to option number 4, eat less food. You can do this by counting your calories. You can do that by counting your food. You can skip meals. You can use some kind of program to assign yourself some numbers, right? You can do time restrictive eating. All these can help you lose weight if you stick to them. And so one way to do it is to just count your calories, exactly what you ate today, and then commit every day to eat 100 less calories. And then you will see if you gain weight. If you're still getting weight on the calories you're eating, then obviously you need to drop more calories faster. And that's why it's important to weigh yourself every day. And if you don't gain weight, well, you know you're on the right track. However, if you want to lose weight, you're going to have to reduce more calories. Maybe you need to drop another 100 calories in order to lose more weight. That's a lot of math and work, isn't it? And that brings us to a much more convenient option number 5, exercise. It's convenient and then inconvenient. When you exercise, you obviously burn more calories, right? Because your muscles are working. And believe it or not, you don't lose very many calories from just exercise alone. In fact, the average person burns about 90 calories running or walking or jogging 1 mile. Guess how many calories the average donut is? 300 calories. You can't even eat a whole donut if you only walk a mile. However, if you build your muscles with resistant exercises, you actually build more glucose reserves to reduce your blood sugars in your blood and to reduce diabetes. Skeletal muscle is super powerful. You have it all over your body. It accounts for 70 to 80% of the insulin-stimulated glucose disposal in the body. Roughly, each additional, let's say 2.2 pounds of lean muscle mass, that can increase glucose uptake by your skeletal muscles about 10 to 15 grams of glucose per day at rest, and far more when that muscle is in motion. This is motion, contracting and extending your muscles, or doing that with your legs and feet, right? Taking a walk after you eat. That will increase your glucose uptake into your muscles, which can increase 5 to 20 times independent of insulin. That's because there's a special GLUT4 translocation pump. So in practical terms, the way to reduce your blood sugar is to increase your lean muscle mass by 3 to 5 kilograms, which is very achievable if you do resistance training 3 times a week. And that has been associated with reducing your diabetes risk, reducing your fasting blood glucose levels by about 5 to 15 milligrams per deciliter. And that also means a substantial reduction of your post-meal glucose spike. In fact, it can change the trajectory of your blood sugar digesting that entire meal, especially if you have insulin resistance, basically prediabetes or diabetes. And this effect is systemic. It's all over your body because you have muscles all over, and they all act as a glucose sink. They turn that into glycogen, and that makes you more insulin sensitive. So the key takeaway is that muscle lowers blood sugars, not simply by existing, but by being metabolically active and metabolically trained and activated on repeat. So this means moving throughout the day after every meal and even in between meals. And even without visible muscle growth, just regular movement and regular resistance training that can totally improve your glucose significantly. Wouldn't it be nice to have controlled blood sugars? You can by controlling your muscles. But the thing is, you're not going to build muscles eating starch and fat. And why not? Because muscles are made by amino acids. So you need to eat protein. But just because you get enough protein doesn't mean you're going to build muscles either, because muscles only know to repair and build if you move them. And you have to move them against resistance. And so if you're not going to use it, your body's not going to spend time building it. The muscle needs to work out with intensity, maybe graded weights. You gradually change it in order to keep the muscle engaged and improving. And so if you're at a 1 pound dumbbell and it's hard right now, as soon as it gets easy, your muscle won't get any bigger. It's going to hit a plateau. And then you're going to have to increase that dumbbell size. But remember, eating protein, if you eat it in excess of your ability to use it, well, not only will it inhibit your ability to tolerate carbohydrates, but it also can be turned into fat. So then, what would you do now?
Hi, friends. I am so thrilled that you want to take charge of your health and take charge of your food. Now, I know nutrition can be complex, but it doesn't have to be. And I'm here to support you in this lifelong journey. So if you point your camera app to this QR code, it'll take you to a link for a free handout that I created just for you. And if you like it, if you want to see other handouts, please go to the link in my show notes, and then you can leave me your feedback on what I could do to help you in your journey. Okay, back to the video now.
Well, that's where option number 6 comes in. What if I told you that there's a form of protein that can help you build muscle, just as good as animal protein, but it's been shown to reduce visceral fat and reduce insulin resistance and improve blood sugars even the day after you eat the food? Yeah, it sounds too good to be true, right? But it is very true. And there is one source of protein that has not only done everything I just listed, but it's considered a longevity food. It's been around for eons on many long-lived cultures. And that protein is from beans. But it's really eating the whole bean, not some purified powder. Beans have been shown to improve insulin sensitivity, despite the fact that they're full of starch when you eat the whole bean. And of course, they have a ton of protein. And do you know why longevity cultures have been eating beans for eons and they never had this crazy obesity or diabetes endemic issues? Well, it's because beans have a food matrix that is made out of resistant starch and fiber. Now, technically speaking, resistant starch and fiber, they're both made out of glucose. But the way that they're linked together is what makes them resistant to your metabolism. It prevents your body from using it as energy. However, your gut microbiome can use it. It may not be food for us, but it's food for them. And when we nourish our gut microbiome, well, they help reduce inflammation and they can help us maintain a healthy weight. The beans also give you a texture of starch, right? Something creamy without the horrible glucose spikes that come or the prolonged blood sugars that remain because people are eating too much fat and carbs. Did you know that if you pick up a bad gut microbe, that not only will it continue to eat the highly refined flours and starch and then push it in your system so that your glucose spikes high, but they also become very efficient in metabolizing starch to make you fat. However, if you inhibit them, basically by eating beans and keep the refined flours and starches low or to zero, you can restore the anti-inflammatory microbes so that it can help you lose weight. Now, I wish I can tell you that I have a probiotic supplement to recommend. I don't. We haven't worked out which ones actually do what. But probiotic pills are kind of like seeding the lawn and not feeding it. So if you want your microbes to grow, you're going to have to feed it. And what do they eat? Prebiotic foods found in beans, like resistant starch and fiber, plus a ton of other micronutrients. Hands down, they are the best prebiotic for your gut microbes. But like any food, you can overeat it. And when you overeat any food, you will gain weight. So in a full day, for most people, probably 1.5 cups is plenty, unless you're bodybuilding. And then you may need to get more weight depending on how rapidly you're exercising. But 1.5 cups of beans really isn't a lot of food in terms of volume. And it's also not complete nutrition. There's a lot of things you're missing. And if all you ate was beans, you're going to be pretty bored just eating the same food over and over. Which brings us to option number 7. When you fall off the wagon, don't snack. Don't give yourself more options. And if you do snack, just eat the same snack. Don't give yourself choices because your snack will get boring. And when it gets boring, you simply will eat less of it and you'll be tired of it. But it would be optimal if you just didn't snack. Hide your snacks up high in the cupboard. Lock the cupboard. make it more difficult for you to access it. Out of sight, out of mind. So if you have to put in more effort, you're less likely to go get that snack. Have you ever noticed that? That you really wanted something, but it took so much effort that you lost the craving when you finally got it. So all of the different processed snacks, they have a lot of calories, especially because the majority of them are combining starch with fat. Take an ounce of potato chips. That has 10 grams of fat. That's like 160 calories for just a few potato chips. Even walking a mile does not lose 160 calories. In fact, you'll have to walk at least 2 miles, just that little tiny snack. And it's crazy. The other day, I saw a very popular health influencer online admit that he liked ice cream, and he put somebody who's so-called expert, made a clip that ice cream is okay to eat because the fat's not that bad. And some ice creams, you know how much fat they have? They have like 18 grams of saturated fat just for one serving. Who eats just one serving, right? People are usually eating multiple scoops of ice cream. And one serving is like 320 calories. And if you get 3 scoops, that may be over 1,000 calories. And it's not just the calories that's the problem, it's the form that the calories are in. And that's saturated fat. It's pretty much will raise your cholesterol even if you're eating coconut milk. And it tastes good because of the fat. That's why people prefer ice cream over sorbet. And snacks, especially sweet snacks with carbohydrates and fats, are the exact recipe to make you insulin resistant, keep your blood sugars high, make you increase weight, or prevent you from losing weight. And the thing is, when you eat those foods, you not only will spike your blood sugars, but you'll keep them elevated longer, the worst kind of blood sugar rise. And that happens even when you're not eating. So then what can you snack on? That brings us to number 8. Now, wouldn't it be perfect if there was a low-calorie sweet food that will satisfy your tummy, fill you up, and make you more insulin sensitive and help you lose weight despite the fact that it has sugar? Well, guess what? There is something like that. In fact, lots of things like that. And they've been around since Adam and Eve. That's fruit. All kinds of fruit. They're so good for your health, so good for you to control your blood sugars and to lose weight. People who eat more fruit, they actually got more insulin sensitive and lower their insulin levels and their blood sugar levels. They also lower their cholesterol levels. And for people who don't have prediabetes or diabetes, they lower their risks of that. But if you do have prediabetes or diabetes, they lowered your blood sugars. Pick your favorite fruit. Grapes, mangoes, papaya. Eat more fruit. The more fresh fruit you eat, the less calories you're eating. And if you pick fruits that have a ton of soluble fiber, you'll get an added bonus because that soluble fiber is beneficial to eat before you eat your starchy, fatty meals. It actually will buffer those calories so that you're not surging it into your system, so that you can eat potatoes, rice, bread, and keep your fats low, lower your glucose, lower your insulin, and yet you're eating carbohydrates. But if you eat the wrong fruit, you can actually go backwards. The key is to eat fresh fruit. Fresh fruit, especially berries, are high in soluble fiber that have been shown even when you mix it as a shake to lower your blood glucose spikes, lower your insulin levels, to allow you to eat white starchy foods. So I eat fruit for my snacks. I eat fruit before my meals, and I eat more fruit when I'm hungry. The more fruit you eat, the better blood sugars will be, the lower your insulin requirements will be. Now, can you think of any other food that is hydrating, low in calories, high in fiber, and protects you from blood sugar spikes? And that brings us to number 9. Vegetables, especially leafy green vegetables. Now, leafy green vegetables have extra magnesium, which is extra beneficial to not only our metabolism, but also to our glucose control. Now, vegetables go beyond low calories. They actually have nutrients to fight visceral fat. And remember, visceral fat is the type of fat that keeps you insulin resistant and your blood sugars high. Have you ever seen a leaf change shape from green to yellow? Well, the yellow are carotenoids. So carotenoids are in all kinds of vegetables, from the leaves to the fruit to the stems. They have been shown to reduce visceral fat. And so when you eat vegetables, that colorful red, purple, green, they not only help you lose weight because they're low in calories, but they actually help you lower your blood sugars because when you eat them, you're eating lots of fiber, especially soluble fiber. You're also eating less calories. And you're eating ingredients that nourishes you so that you can reduce your visceral fat so that you don't need it anymore. And really, it's not just about calories when it comes to eating food, especially starches and sugars. And when you focus on that, you may not be getting your health, because there's many people who are diabetic and they're super skinny. Too many people focus on their weight. But if you're skinny with diabetes, you often have visceral fat on the inside. You are called TOFI, thin on the outside, fat on the inside. That's very popular in the Asian population. They don't eat a lot of food, but they eat the wrong kinds of foods that keep their visceral fat in their gut to make them insulin resistant. So if you want to get insulin sensitive, you have to give up the wrong kind of foods, the high fat foods, because you still get the complications of diabetes, except you don't have obesity. And when you have high glucose, your organs will suffer, your liver will suffer, your kidneys will suffer, your blood vessels suffer, and your immune system suffers. Eventually, those blood sugars will make you have high cholesterol, and it increases your risk of cancer. So just because you're not overweight doesn't mean that you're healthy inside. And it doesn't mean you're immune to all the other metabolic effects that comes with visceral fat. And that's why it's super important that we're not just emphasizing calories, that we're actually emphasizing quality of food. And that brings us to number 10. Upgrade your grains to eating whole grains. It's easy. You can even do it in your bread. Because when you do that, you're eating a fiber matrix that protects your glucose from spiking too high. So I mentioned in the beginning that you can eat this white bread and white rice and white potatoes. And white food is not the healthiest to eat. There should be no reason that we can't upgrade our food and eat, let's say, red rice or brown rice instead of white rice, or eat a whole grain bread instead of a white flour bread. And it's better yet if we just stop eating bread and just eat the whole grains. And it's such a shame that we have normalized eating highly processed refined foods that when we see the natural stuff, we don't know what to do with it. We have been trained to think that this is natural. There's nothing natural about this slice of bread. And white rice, well, that's a highly ultra-processed food where the bran was totally removed, the good stuff, the bran and germ, and it's been fortified with synthetic vitamin. And we did the same thing to the wheat berry, just extracted the starch and flours and just threw a bunch of vitamins. It's crazy that we threw the most nutritious part of the grain and we just kept the energy-rich starch. We don't work out enough to eat that food. Ironically, industry has trained everybody to eat these highly refined starches, so they don't feel bad about serving it to then billions of people around the globe, because everybody's trained to eat refined foods like white rice and white flour. And they've converted to all different kinds of desserts and gluten-free this and that. What it's doing is just a vehicle to hide fat, right? Flours are crappy to eat. Have you ever eaten flour with water? It's tasteless. If you add a little fat to it, then that could be a type of really tasty bread. It's junk food, folks. But the more important thing is when you eat whole grains, that fiber matrix protects you from glucose spikes. But that fiber also activates your gut microbiome to really reduce your inflammation, to then reduce pathogenic other microorganisms that honestly are trained to most efficiently process ultra-refined grains so that it becomes glucose. But when you eat food with color, notice this isn't just white bread, it has some color. That color are made out of anthocyanins if you pick the darker, redder, richer colors. So like red rice, or when you pick a dark wheat color, wheat berries, they actually inhibit pathogenic bacteria. They protect your mitochondria to optimize your glucose metabolism. But the reality is not all grains are created equal. In fact, there is one grain, oats, that have been proven to cure diabetes. If you want to learn more about that, watch the next video.